After we're gonna talk about international trade. To know this topic, we have to know first what is free trade and why it's important. Free trade is an economic theory that involves the analysis and function of importing and exporting goods without restriction. A lot of nations engage in free trade to make sure their citizens have enough economic resources or consumers goods for meeting various needs or wants. This free trade is built upon the comparative advantage theory. Was made by David Ricardo, an English political economist in the early 1800s. Okay, it's important because free trade can help nations develop the best economic policies for their citizens. Companies willing to meet consumers' demand for various items will look for the cheapest resources or goods to improve supplies. Nations engaged in this free trade allow companies to import resources or goods from international countries with no government restriction or tariffs. Governments replace restrictions or tariffs on imported goods often increase a company's cost of doing business in the domestic economic market. Okay, first, this trade have a wage benefit. Why? Because free trade can help nations improve in the job opportunities in the economic market. Companies allow to maximize a nation's natural economic resources can develop a comparative advantage when producing consumer goods. This comparative advantage usually allows companies to offer higher employees' wages since few nations or companies able to reproduce the specific goods. We're going to talk about comparative advantages more later. The ability of other nations or companies to create substitute goods in the marketplace allow companies to charge higher customers' prices and increase gross profit. Okay, the quality of life benefits. Nations can increase the quality of life for the citizens when engaging in free trade. Free trade allows the lowest prices goods to enter the marketplace. Low consumer prices usually help individuals increase their purchasing power. Higher purchasing power allows individuals to purchase more customers with fewer dollars. Not only does this increase an individual's quality of life, it also generates higher national economic growth through increased customer purchase.
Okay, now, sorry. Now we're going to talk about why countries trade. Sorry. Countries trade with each other when, on their own, they don't have the enough resources or capacity to satisfy their own needs and wants. So, by developing and exploiting their domestic scarce resources, countries can produce their surplus and trade this for the resources they need. So the goods and services are likely to be imported from abroad for several reasons. Imports may be cheaper or of a better quality, and they may also be more easily available or simple, more appealing than locally produced goods. In many instances, no local alternatives exist, and importing is essential. I'm sorry. This is highlighted today in the case of Japan, which has not, which doesn't have reserves of its own. And well, another thing that you have to know is one country might be more productive than others in all goods, in the sense that it can produce any good using fewer inputs such as a capital and labor, than other countries required to produce the same good. Regardless inside what does such a country will still benefit from trading according to its comparative advantage, exporting products for which its absolute advantage was greatest and importing those for which its absolute advantage was comparatively less. Recent research shows that when trade opens up, it is followed by adjustment not only across industries, but within them as well. And increased competition from foreign firms puts a pressure on profits, forcing less efficient firms to contract, making room for more efficient firms, and well, expansions, and new entry introduce better technologies and new product varieties. Likely, most important trade enables greater selection across different types of goods. For example, say refrigerators. So this explains the prevalence of intra-industry trade. For example, countries that export household refrigerators may import industrial coolers, which the factor endowment approach does not encompass. So now, why governments restrict the free trade? One of them is to protect domestic jobs from cheap labor abroad. Wages in industrialized countries are higher because their output per worker is higher than developing country. These higher wages reflect higher productivity, and otherwise there is a new competitive advantage in producing the product, or the owners have to reduce wage to match productivity. For example, the US has import tariffs on sugar, making imported sugar more and domestically grown sugar. The Thus people in the US are going to buy US produced sugar, which gives money in the wallets of USA sugar producers and farmers. Now the second reason is because they need to improve a trade deficit. Well, that improve a trade benefit. This deficit, I'm sorry. Trade barriers make imports more expensive, and as a result, they also decrease the demand for imports. However, in retaliation, trading partners can do the same and increase prices for exports. So now, thus, this using this rationally, governments won't necessarily fix the problem. If domestically produced goods aren't competitive or are not high quality, countries will also spend less on imports if their exports go down. Now, the third reason is to protect infant industries. Countries want to give newly developing industries, known as an infant industries, time to grow and become competitive. This is reasonable argument for imposing trade barriers. However, in some cases, the government protection never ends. These industries become competitive only because the government has given the benefits of the trade barrier. Now, another reason is to protect from dumping. Dumping is when an importer sells products or below average cost of production, at below average of cost of the production. I'm sorry. Dumping is hard to prove, yet nonetheless, sometimes countries impose anti-dumping duties just because it is competing against a locally manufactured product. And another one is, and the last one is to earn more revenue. This is because governments gain extra revenue from tariffs, which is a tax on imports. The tariff might be in the form of a specific or ad valorem tax. Tariffs raise the price of the imported goods and lower its consumption. That's why.
Okay, so now I'm going to tell you a little bit about the WTO and what it stands for, what is its mission, and all of that. So first of all, WTO stands for World Trade Organization. It is the only global international organization dealing with the rules of trade between nations. It is a forum for governments to negotiate trade agreements. It is a place for them to settle trade disputes. And it operates a system of trade rules. So essentially, the WTO is a place where member governments try to sort out the trade problems that they face with each other. So the goal of the WTO is to ensure that trade flows as smoothly, predictably, and freely as possible. So it's one of the most important trade organizations in the world since it's the only one. So whenever two countries or more have some problems about exporting goods, whatever the problem is, they go to the WTO and expect that they reach a settlement. So now the pros and cons on free trade from the consumer and the producer view. So a pro for the consumer is that it lowers taxes and barriers to entry. So that increases business opportunities. So in this case, protections are put into trade agreements as an effort to protect local businesses. So when these protections are removed, the result tends to favor the consumer because more competition from global entities can occur at the local level. So it reduces government expenditures. Local industries are often subsidized by local governments. So by introducing new best practices and building new efficiencies into the system, less money needs to be provided by the government to keep prices affordable at the local level. A con for this is that there are often substandard working conditions. This means poor working conditions. Because free trade puts a point of emphasis in the lack of restrictions, it can promote poor working conditions that people are forced to endure if they wish to earn a living for their family. One of the most common forms of exploitation is children labor. So when they give work to children in the fields or in the farms so they can earn a little bit more money for their families. So it does not usually protect your environment. Natural resources are quickly depleted from the local population. So an economy that is built on this process will often fail because once the resources are gone, there is nothing left to trade.
Okay. What is comparative advantage? How the countries that has it can benefit from it. What is Mexico comparative advantage? Okay. Like I mentioned before, comparative advantage was built by economic political named Javier Ricardo. Comparative advantage is when a country produces a good or service for a lower opportunity cost than the other countries. Opportunity cost measure trade-off. A nation with a comparative advantage makes the trade-off worth it. The benefits of buying their good or service outweigh the disadvantage. The country may not be the last best at producing something, but the good or service has a low opportunity cost for the other countries to import. Ricardo considered that goods and services countries should produce and suggests that they should specialize by allocating their scarce sources to produce goods and service. For
No way. Una cámara.
Yeah, I.
Okay, what is comparative advantage? How the countries that was it can benefit from it, and what is Mexico comparative advantage? Like I said before, comparative advantage was built by the economic political named David Ricardo. The comparative advantage is when a country produces a good or service for a lower opportunity cost than other countries. Opportunity cost measure a trade-off. A nation with a comparative advantage makes that trade-off worth. Sorry. The benefits of buying their good or service outweigh the disadvantages. The country may not be the best at producing something, but a good or service has a low opportunity cost for the other countries to import. Nabil Ricardo considered that goods and services countries should produce and should suggest that they should specialize by allocating their scarce resources to produce and goods and services for which they have a comparative cost advantage. There are two types of cost advantage, absolute and comparative. Okay, we talk about the comparative now. I want to talk about the absolute advantage. The absolute advantage means being more productive or cost efficient than other countries, where areas comparative advantage relates to how much productive or cost efficient one country is than another. Okay, how countries can benefit from this comparative advantage? Well, one example is India's call center. US companies buy this service because it's cheaper than locating the call center in America. Indian call centers are even better than US call centers. The workers don't always speak English very clearly, but they provide the services cheaply enough to make the trade-off worth it. Okay, Mexico is an ever more relevant actor in global trade. Sorry. The country participation in some of the most important sectors of the global economy is growing. In fact, it is quite likely that the vehicle you drive, the plane you took a few weeks ago, and the computer equipment and cellular phone you use have been manufactured in Mexico or contain parts produced in our country. Hourly wages in Mexico in dollar terms are now 40% lower than in China, making it better for Canadian firms to build a plant or resource export. Also, there is a less trouble involved which decreases the cost of the products. Mexico offers the third lowest tax burden to work among OECD countries. Mexico is an open country economy, that guarantees access to international markets. The country boasts a strategic geographic location and competitive cost to service global markets. It also has an important pool of young and highly skilled human capital.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the process to import. The first stage in an import transaction relates to making trade inquiries. An inquiry is a written request from the intending buyer or his agent for information regarding the price and the terms on which the exporter will be able to supply goods. The importer should mention in the inquiry that all the details are such as the goods required, their description, catalog number or grade, size, weight, and the quantity required. Similarly, the time and method of delivery, method of packing, terms and conditions in regard to payment shall be also indicated. In reply to this inquiry, the importer will receive a quotation from the exporter, which contains the details as to the goods available, their quality, the price, etc. Then we have to make the procurement of import license and quota. A person or a firm cannot import goods without a valid import license. An import license may be either a general license or a specific license. Under a general license, goods can be imported from any country, whereas a specific or individual license authorizes to import only from specific countries. For the purpose of issuing license, the importers are divided into three categories. The first one is established importer, the second one is actual users, and the third one is registered exporters. Those import under any of the export promotion chains. An established importer can make an application to secure a quota certificate. The certificate specifies the quantity and value of goods which the importer can import, including a certificate from a chartered accountant in the prescript from certifying the CIF or any of the other Incoterms value of the goods imported in the selected year. The quota certificate entitles the established importer to import up to the value indicated terrain, that is called quota, which is calculated on the basis of past imports. Then we have to obtain the foreign exchange. After obtaining the license or quota, the importer has to make arrangement for obtaining necessary foreign exchange, since the importer has to make payment for the imports in the currency of the country. The foreign exchange reserves in many countries are controlled by the government and are released through its central bank. The importer gets the necessary foreign exchange from the exchange bank concerned. It is to be noted that whereas import license is issued for a particular period, exchange is released only for a specific transaction. Then we have to place the intent or order. The next step in the import of goods is placing the order. This order is known as indent. This contains the instructions from the importer as to the quantity and quality of goods required, method of forwarding them, nature of packing, mode of settling payment, and the price, etc. Now we have to place the intent or order. This step contains the instructions from the importer as to the quantity and quality of goods required, method of rewarding them, nature of packing, mode of selling, payment, and the price, etc. An intent is usually prepared in duplicate or triplicate. The intent might be of several types, like open intent, close intent, and confirmatory intent. Now, the next step is dispatching a letter of credit. Generally, foreign traders are not acquainted to each other, and so the exporter, before shipping the goods, wants to be sure about the creditworthiness of the importer. The exporter wants to be sure that there is no risk of no payment. Usually, for this purpose, he asks the importers to send a letter of credit to him. The next step is obtaining necessary documents. On receipt of the letter of credit, the exporter arranges for the shipment of goods and sends advice note to the importer immediately after the shipment of goods. An advice note is a document sent to a purchaser of goods to inform him that goods have been dispatched. The exporter then draws a bill of exchange on the importer for the invoice value of goods. Then come the customs formalities and clearing of goods. After receiving the documents of title of the goods, the importer's only concern is to take delivery of the goods. When the ship arrives at the port and to bring them to his own place of business, the importer has to comply with many formalities for taking delivery of goods. To obtain endorsement for delivery or delivery order. When the ship carrying the goods arrives at the port, the importer first of all has to obtain the endorsement on the back of the bill of lading by the shipping company. The shipping company makes this endorsement for or issues the delivery order only after the payment of freight. If the exporter has not paid the freight, the importer has to pay the freight in order to get green signal for the delivery goods. The cost of the freight is always put into the indent. To pay dock dues and obtain port trust dues receipts. The importer has to submit 2 copies of a form known as application to import, duly filed into the Lading and Shipping Dues Office. Then is the bill of entry. The importer will then fill in form colored bill of entry. This is a form supplied by the Customs Office and is to be filled in triplicate. The bill of entry contains the particulars regarding the name and address of the importer, the name of the ship, package number, marks, quantity, value, description of goods, the name of the country wherefrom goods have been imported, and customs duty payable. Then we have the bill of sale. If the importer is not in a position to supply the detailed particulars of goods because of insufficiency or information supplied to him by the exporter, he has to prepare a statement called a bill of sale. The bill of sale contains only the information possessed by the importer along with a remark that he is not in a position to give complete information about the goods. Then we have to pay customs and import duty. There are 2 types of importing goods. The first one is non-durables or free goods. The second one is goods which are to be sold within the country or which are from home consumption. And the third one is re-exportable goods. These goods are meant for re-export. If the goods are duty-free, no import duty is to be paid at the customs office. Customs authorities will permit the delivery of such goods after usual examination of the goods. But if the goods are liable for duty, the importer has to pay customs or import duty, which might be based on weight or measurement of goods, called specific duty, or on the value of importing goods or valorem duty. Then is making the payment. The mode of time of making payment is determined according to the terms and conditions as agreed to earlier between the importer and the exporter. Usually 30 to 90 days are allowed to the importer for making the payment of such bills. Then is time for closing the transactions. The last step in the import trade procedure is closing the transaction. If the goods are to the satisfaction of the importer, the transaction is closed. But if he is not satisfied with the quality of goods, or if there is any shortage, he will write to the exporter and settle the matter. In case the goods have been damaged in transit, he will claim compensation from the insurance company. The insurance company will pay him the compensation under an advice to the exporter. And this is how a process of import is made.
Thank you for your
Thank you very
attention.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.